Hey, welcome to this edition of Road Warrior. Now, we've taken a different approach to this show. We've actually gone inside this vehicle, the 2014 Hyundai Equus. And the reason we did that is twofold. One is actually frigid outside, but two, we really want to show you what this vehicle has to offer, first from the inside out. Now, Equus is the luxury liner in the Hyundai lineup. Now, what would be less confusing is if they made this its own brand, kind of like Honda has Acura, Nissan has Infiniti, Toyota has Lexus. Hyundai needs to have its own brand. Now, whether that's Equus or some other type of name, that needs to come along, basically allowing the kind of consumer to know at first hand that, hey, this is delivering luxury. Now, when you take a first glance at the Equus, you're really going to see strong lines to its competitors, a lot of comparisons to the Mercedes and even the BMW 7 Series. Now, that's no shocker because when you enter this luxury liner, you don't want to be outside the mold. You really want to kind of blend in, and a lot of vehicles are doing it across the board, so you can't really fault Hyundai for doing that. They've really got to stay within the comfort zone of the consumer. Now, one of the first things you're going to notice with the Equus is that it delivers luxury and innovation, and most specifically on the inside, more specifically right behind the steering wheel. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is it comes in two models, the Signature or the Ultimate, with this one being the Ultimate. Now, either way, you're going to get premium leather throughout, a lot of innovations like technologies, Bluetooth, and everything really at the touch of your fingertip. Now, what you're going to get used to behind the steering wheel is that kind of Boeing 747 kind of feel, referring to all that kind of cockpit-like design with the buttons and the triggers and all the elements that take to run this vehicle. Now, with all the comparisons out there, you really got to start there when you talk about this vehicle. And one of the biggest comparisons is the 7 Series BMW. Now, by the numbers, this vehicle is going to measure in around about 203 inches, with the 7 Series about 2 inches longer. Now, where the wheelbases really get stretched out on this vehicle is 119 inches, with the BMW coming in around about 126 inches. Obviously, you get a little bit more length between the wheels. Now, there's two models, the Signature and the Ultimate. Of course, this one being the Ultimate. And what I found, because I did do the Signature a few months back, and there's a few differences. Basically, the Ultimate's really going to turn this vehicle more into a limo-like ride. Now, where you're going to notice that is the rear window screens. I'm a big fan of these, not because it keeps the sun out, but it really makes the vehicle look more like a limo. Kind of makes you feel like you're being driven around, even if you're the driver. Now, what's great on the limo screens that this vehicle has is, of course, the back one is powered. And typically on the passenger sides, they're going to be manual. You're going to reach down, pull them up. But on this vehicle, they're actually powered. Now, what's great is you can actually power them from the driver's seat. Just reach down there, pull them up, push them down, and they retract in and out of the door jamb. Now, better yet, when you're in the back seat, those controls are actually on both sides of the vehicle as well, basically meaning any passenger can put those screens up and down, and even the back passengers can control that rear screen just the same. Now, where those lengthy numbers are going to come into play is right on the inside. Most notable is leg room. Now, up front, it's going to be about 45 inches, more than enough, because anything over 40 inches is just a bonus. Now, in the back, it's going to be around about 38. But again, most occupants in the front, unless they're NBA stars, are going to be typically in that 40 to 41 inches of leg room, having to move this chair up a little bit, easily giving the back some more, typically going to measure in about 40 inches. And that's going to be great because this vehicle is great to be the driver, but it's even better to be driven in because a lot of people are going to want to take that back seat and point where they want to go. Now, again, the comparisons are endless between this vehicle and like the BMW and the Mercedes, but again, I tend to focus just on the Equus because it's still in its own element. Now, one nice feature I love, instead of a touchscreen system like you're going to find on a lot of vehicles, just like the BMW and other models, you're going to find a central control knob right between the front passengers. Now, again, like on other models, basically that's a knob that goes in all directions, turns, goes up, goes down, goes left, and controls the functions on that screen. Now, what was really great on that screen is they kind of took a little bit retro. What I'm referring to is when you listen to like XM radio or even traditional radio, there's actually kind of that old traditional dial that kind of will scroll left and right until you find the station you want. Now, what's cumbersome on a lot of vehicles is that type of setup isn't there, meaning you're going to have to do a one touch up and down to find that specific channel or go through menu settings. On this model with that central knob, it's real easy, and when you're driving a vehicle at 50, 60 miles an hour, you want simplicity at your fingertips. Now, one thing you can't overlook on this vehicle is the amount of buttons you're going to have behind the driver's seat. Now, what they've done is they've made that simple with that kind of central control knob. Once you really fine-tune your kind of knowledge on that, you really kind of ease your way around these buttons. Before then, of course, it's really a big learning curve. Now, what I love behind the steering wheel is the electronic gauge cluster. There's no old traditional here, no old needles. It's really just one big screen that you can customize the way you like. Now, even better yet is if you change the driving mode, it actually changes the digital readout, allowing you to really kind of give a heads up. And what you'll do is you hit the driving mode, and if it goes into kind of that sport dynamic mode, it changes to red, kind of gets you invigorated. And really you'll feel the vehicle kind of change as you press it. Now, if you go back to the other standard mode, now it goes back to blue and kind of a little bit more softer, lets you know that you're here for cruising. Now, just to get the ergonomics down in this vehicle, what you're going to find, of course, you got that huge console in the middle. It's split, so it opens up and swallows anything you can possibly throw in it. Now, on the dash, you're going to find somewhat simplicity. A lot of buttons for maybe like the CD player, you know, the track picking and all that, and the volume control. Now, the volume knob on this vehicle is fairly small, but again, that's to be expected on a luxury liner. You don't want some huge oversized knob that looks gaudy. Now, right above it is the climate. It has traditional buttons like the fan speed, the rear defrost, and all those stuff. So those are all right there. A lot of times you're going to find those type of controls kind of in that touchscreen system on a lot of vehicles. Not on this one, because you really want one less thing to do on that center knob here. You really just want those nice buttons that you have on the dash. So while a lot of vehicles are minimizing these type buttons, going with that central display, this vehicle kind of blends the two worlds. Now, it's to be expected that you have power controls for the seating, but it's not expected to actually have them everywhere, and that is the case. In the front passenger seats and in the back, you have total control of how you sit. Now, the driver's going to get the most bang for your buck because literally you can kind of raise, lower, cushion any part of your body you can possibly think of. Now, when you get to the other seating, there's going to be maybe just a few less options, but really everything's about the same, really allowing you to even get in those back seats and recline. Now, there's a nice little feature back there, and we'll get into it later, but a little hint at it. Basically, that rear console will flip down between the passengers. If there's not a front occupant, there's actually a little button you can press called relax. Now, what that does is actually move this front seat all the way forward and allows that back rear passenger to stretch out, as that too will recline and allow you to get your kind of comfort on that long stretch of road. Now, I won't harp on it a lot, but really driving this vehicle or riding in it, it's really just the best of both worlds. Now, when you're behind the steering wheel and you got the passengers with you, they're just going to marvel at the comfort that comes with this vehicle and even the dynamics of controlling everything. Now, this is the ultimate, so what you're going to find is kind of rear TV screens. Now, what's great on those TV screens is the rear passengers can see everything that the front passengers can see, right down to the navigation, right down to the stereo choice, or even videos if you put that in. Now, they can control that. You flip that rear console down, obviously only 2 occupants if you do that, but they literally have all the kind of Boeing 747 controls you to have up here. Now, again, if your passengers are novices, you're going to spend a lot of time answering all their questions, like what does this button do? What does this button do? But once you have maybe your true clientele in here, your friends of long ago, they're going to learn how to handle that themselves. Now, what will be somewhat aggravating is if you want to listen to country and they're tired of listening to it, they can actually dial in their own tuning selections, maybe put a little bit of Beethoven or Mozart on. Now, this steering wheel is to be expected, tilt, telescoping, and all that, basically allowing you to kind of set the position you want. Even better yet, when you get in this driver's seat and you have set your preset, basically all this is going to customize every time you get into the vehicle. Now, if the wife wants to drive just the same, you can set hers and it'll change that. Now, it wouldn't hurt maybe if you had even a third in there, just in case you have a little extra money left over that you can hire a driver. Now, there's only 2 settings, which means it's either going to be the wife and you or the wife and the driver. Now, with all the vast innovation behind the wheel, one of the biggest ones you're going to notice is under the hood, and that's a 5.0 liter 32 valve V8 engine. Now, it's going to deliver around about 429 horses and 376 foot-pounds of torque. Now, what's great again with those dynamic modes is you can really set this vehicle to how you like to drive. You either have the kind of comfort drive or that sport mode. Now, again, when you go in that sport mode, the driving dynamics on the gauges are going to turn into red and let you know that this thing is ready to go. Now, when you stomp the gas between the two, the sport really delivers. Now, when you're in that dynamic sport mode, the biggest thing you'll notice is those RPMs are squealing and are a lot higher. typically a lot lower when you're in the cruising mode. But what that allows you to do is really get this vehicle off the line. And again, if you're driving with friends and you want to show off a little bit, that sport mode doesn't hurt. Of course, on the everyday driver, you may want to take it back to the standard mode because you're going to get better fuel economy, and it takes those RPMs quite lower. Now, the engine's coupled with the 8-speed automatic transmission, and one nice feature they have on it is the kind of manual-like stick. Now, they don't have the paddle shifters on this vehicle, which I think is fine because this is a luxury liner, so I'm not really going to feel that sport on the steering wheel, but I wouldn't mind feeling it on the gear shifter. Now, again, when you put this thing in sport mode and you're ready to stomp it, it doesn't hurt to go into manual. Now, if you want to compare the horsepower just a little bit to the BMW 750 series, that's going to give about 450 horsepower and 480 foot-pounds of torque, and probably cost a little bit extra money. Now, in comparison to the 740 series, it's actually a little bit better because that's going to be around about 300 horses. Now, of course, the 7 series does come with the V12, which is going to be over 500 horses, and it really isn't even comparable because that's going to be a huge bottom dollar. Now, another nice feature we loved was the camera angles in this vehicle. Now, it's the old traditional backup camera, but it also has cameras mounted on the side mirrors and in the front. Now, at slow speeds, this allows you to get kind of that surround view like we saw in the Infiniti QX56. Now, that's a much bigger vehicle, but basically allows you to get in those tight spots and really keep this vehicle from doing the old scratch and dent in those tight areas. Now, the outside is where the package comes together because, again, this is a full-size luxury sedan. Now, a lot of people are going to mirror this exterior with the BMW, even the Mercedes, and a lot of people compliment it because of that or complain because it's too much like those vehicles. Now, this car has a lot of innovation. Of course, it has a smart key system, which basically means you leave it in your pocket and it knows you're here. Now, obviously, the mirror retracts, which is great in those tight spots because on a luxury vehicle like this, you don't need people beside you banging the car up. Now, as you get close, the mirror, of course, opens up. The car will unlock as you reach close, and it illuminates, of course, in the darkness. Now, I talked about it earlier, but really these rear limo screens give this vehicle kind of that luxury appeal. Now, it means basically it's as good to be driven in this vehicle as it is to be the driver. Now, what they really do is block out the sun and, of course, really darken it so you can kind of have your privacy and feel like you're in luxury. Now, swing around to the back, the smart key system really culminates back here as well. Really get into that huge cargo volume in the trunk, and it's real simple because you pretty much come right up, press the corresponding button, and it's going to rise to the occasion. Now, you'll see this kind of technology on luxury vehicles and, of course, SUVs, but really allowing this trunk to power up is the ultimate in luxury. Now, of course, put your items in here, and then you want to close it back up. You press the button, and it's going to go right down. That does for this edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Roberson, and we tried out the 2014 Hyundai Equus Ultimate. Now, what this really does is deliver luxury to the Hyundai lineup and really competes with the big names like BMW and Mercedes. Now, one thing you can't do is compare it totally to it. Now, maybe the outside, but not the bottom dollar, because this is truly going to top out in the $70,000 range, where a lot of BMWs are going to be even $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 more than that. So with all your bang for your buck in this vehicle, try to compare that to a BMW, and you just won't be able to. Now, I'd like to thank you for watching this edition of Road Warrior, and as always, keep both hands on the wheel and eyes straight ahead.